On March 14, 1919, a letter arrived at the New Orleans Times-Picayune. It claimed to be written by a demon, a being from hell itself, and it made a promise. At exactly 12:15 a.m. the following Tuesday, the author would pass through the city. Every home playing jazz music would be spared. Every silent home would not. That letter was signed by the Axeman of New Orleans, a figure responsible for at least 8 brutal attacks and 6 confirmed deaths across the Crescent City. And on the night of March 19, 1919, every jazz hall, every dance club, every parlor in New Orleans was packed to the walls. People played music for their lives. Not a single attack occurred that night. But the killings didn't stop. And the Axeman was never caught. To understand the terror, you have to understand the city. New Orleans in 1918 was a pressure cooker. World War I was draining young men from the streets. The Spanish flu pandemic was killing people by the thousands. Louisiana alone would lose over 34,000 residents to the virus. Racial tensions ran deep. The city's large Italian-American community, concentrated in neighborhoods like the French Quarter and Gretna, faced persistent discrimination and suspicion, still haunted by the mass lynching of 11 Italian men in 1891, one of the largest single mass lynchings in American history. It was into this volatile, fearful city that the Axeman emerged. The attacks followed a chilling pattern. The killer targeted small groceries, many of them owned and operated by Italian-American families who lived in apartments attached to or above their shops. Entry was almost always the same. A panel from the rear door of the home would be chiseled out, sometimes with such precision that neighbors heard nothing. Once inside, the Axeman would retrieve an axe or heavy blade, often belonging to the victims themselves, and attack people as they slept. The first widely recognized attack in the modern series struck on May 23, 1918. Joseph Maggio and his wife Catherine were found in their bed behind their grocery store, skulls split open by a razor and an axe. Joseph's own axe was found in the apartment, coated in blood. Their throats had been slashed so deeply that Catherine was nearly decapitated. The back door panel had been neatly removed. Nothing of significant value was stolen. And that was only the beginning. Because what came next defied every attempt at explanation. Over the next 18 months, the attacks multiplied. On June 28, 1918, Louis Bissumer, a Polish grocer, and his companion Harriet Lowe were found hacked in their home behind the store. Both survived, but Lowe later died from her injuries. On August 5, a pregnant woman named Anna Schneider was attacked as she slept. She survived and delivered a healthy baby a week later, but could describe nothing about her attacker. Then came August 10. Joseph Romano, a barber and elderly man, was attacked in his home while his young nieces slept in the next room. The girls woke to see a tall, heavy-set figure in a dark suit standing over their uncle with an axe. Romano died 2 days later. His niece Pauline described a man who seemed to vanish into the night, and once again, the back door panel had been removed with surgical care. Here's where it gets strange. Despite 6 major attacks in just a few months, police found almost no physical evidence. No fingerprints. No footprints worth casting. No murder weapon that didn't already belong to the household. Multiple suspects were arrested, questioned, and released. Louis Bissumer himself was charged, then acquitted. A man named James Gleason confessed, then recanted. Every lead dissolved. So what do you do when a city is gripped by a killer no one can see, no one can catch, and no one can explain? You get the letter. Published on March 14, 1919, the Axeman's letter to the Times-Picayune is one of the most extraordinary documents in American criminal history. Written in a florid, almost theatrical style, it declared, "They have never caught me and they never will. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a fell demon from the hottest hell. The author claimed to be fond of jazz music and announced that on the next Tuesday night, the eve of St. Joseph's Day, a holiday sacred to the city's Italian-American community, every home without jazz music playing would be visited. What would you have done? Locked your doors and prayed? Or cranked up the phonograph? New Orleans chose the music. On the night of March 19th, composer Joseph John DeVille's hastily written novelty tune, The Mysterious Axeman's Jazz, sold out across the city. Dance halls overflowed. Families who had never listened to jazz in their lives played it until dawn. And true to the letter's promise, or perhaps by calculated design, there were no attacks that night. But the reprieve was temporary. On August 10, 1919, Steve Bocca, another Italian grocer, was attacked in his sleep. He survived. On September 3, 19-year-old Sarah Lawnman was found unconscious in her bed, several teeth knocked out, attacked through the same signature chiseled door panel. She survived but remembered nothing. And then, on October 27, 1919, came the final known attack. Mike Pepitone, a grocer, was killed in his bedroom while his wife and 6 children slept nearby. His wife claimed she glimpsed a large figure fleeing the room. The back door panel was removed. Pepitone's own axe was left behind. And then, silence. The Axeman of New Orleans was never heard from again. But here's a detail that has haunted researchers for over a century. On December 2, 1920, in Los Angeles, a man named Joseph Mumford was shot dead on a sidewalk by a woman in black. That woman was identified as Esther Albano, the widow of Mike Pepitone, the Axeman's final known victim. She reportedly told police that Mumford was the Axeman. Mumford was a known criminal with a lengthy record in New Orleans, and some investigators noted that his periods of imprisonment roughly aligned with gaps in the Axeman's attacks. Esther Albano served 3 years for manslaughter. But Mumford was never officially connected to the Axeman case by New Orleans police. No evidence was presented. No investigation was concluded. So who was the Axeman of New Orleans? Over 100 years later, the theories still multiply. Some historians point to Joseph Mumford and argue the circumstantial timeline is too precise to ignore. Others suggest the attacks were connected to mafia extortion rackets targeting Italian grocers, a theory that would explain the ethnic pattern of the victims but not the seemingly motiveless violence or the bizarre letter. Some criminologists have proposed a lone sexual sadist or a deranged individual with a fixation on a specific type of victim. A few have even suggested there was no single Axeman at all, that some of the attacks were copycat crimes in a city already drowning in fear. The New Orleans Police Department never closed the case. No one was ever charged. The Axeman's letter, dramatic, taunting, almost literary, has been analyzed by linguists, criminal profilers, and historians, and no consensus exists on whether it was genuine or a hoax written by someone else entirely. Consider this: at least 12 people were attacked. At least 6 died. The killer operated in one of the most densely populated cities in the American South, entered homes with a method so consistent it became a signature, and left behind virtually no trace. Over a dozen suspects were investigated. None were convicted. And then, as suddenly as the attacks began, they stopped. Does a killer simply stop? Did the Axeman die? Was he imprisoned for another crime? Did he move to another city and begin again under a different shadow? Or was Esther Albano right? Did she end it herself on a Los Angeles sidewalk with a pistol and a widow's grief? We may never know. And maybe that's exactly what the Axeman wanted. If this case kept you up tonight, you're not alone. New Orleans has been asking these questions for over a century. Subscribe to Obscura Files and hit the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the cases history forgot to solve. Drop your theory in the comments: lone killer, mafia conspiracy, or something stranger? We read every single one. Until next time, Keep the music playing.